This happened about 5 years ago, but it still comes up in conversation because we honestly have no idea what really happened or what almost happened to us. I'm sharing this to hear other people's thoughts. It was around 7:00 p.m. in November, already dark in Metro Detroit. I was driving, and my fiancée was in the passenger seat. We had just exited a fairly busy highway and turned onto one of the mile roads near a big shopping mall and outlet area. Being so close to the mall, it felt strange that the road was completely empty at that time of night. As we drove westbound on this deserted stretch, we noticed a car stopped in the middle lane with the engine still running. The road was dark except for streetlights spaced about every 80 yards, but the brake lights were clearly on and we were approaching fast. My fiancée and I were talking when we both suddenly paused and questioned what we were seeing. It didn't make sense, especially since the speed limit on that road is around 45 or 50 mph. You don't just stop there, especially near a highway exit. We slowed down because we're cautious drivers and passed the vehicle in the far left lane since it was sitting in the middle. As soon as we were about a car length ahead, the driver suddenly floored it and sped up to catch us. We stayed in the left lane, but I instinctively started braking because the situation felt wrong, even though braking probably wasn't the safest move. There was still no traffic in either direction. That's when we noticed the driver swerving between the middle lane and the left lane, like they were deliberately trying to sideswipe us. That was an immediate red flag. This didn't look like distracted or drunk driving. Whoever it was had control and was intentionally getting dangerously close to the side of my Jeep at about 45 mph. The vibes were bad. Without warning, we were suddenly hit with a powerful spotlight shining straight into my car through the passenger window. I have 20% tint on my Jeep, which usually helps with glare, but even with that, the light completely blinded us. All we could see was white. I didn't even have time to check my mirrors before slamming on the brakes, and honestly, I probably wouldn't have been able to see them anyway. I remember my fiancée yelling, "What the hell?" When we could finally see again, the driver was already yards ahead, speeding away. I immediately told my fiancée to call 911. I don't mess around with stuff like this. I started driving faster to try to get close enough to see the license plate. For context, Michigan has these left turn setups where you can't turn left directly. You have to go past the intersection, make a U-turn, then turn right to go the direction you want. I saw the car ahead turning into one of the mall entrances, which led into a massive roundabout with a speed limit of about 20 mph and lots of stop signs. My fiancée was on the phone with dispatch while I tried to catch up. The driver was blowing through red lights and stop signs. Dispatch told us not to follow, but I kept going for a bit because I was angry and really wanted that plate number, while still keeping a safe distance. I wasn't about to tail someone who might have a weapon. The driver clearly knew we were behind them and started speeding through the roundabout, cutting off other cars and ignoring intersections until we eventually lost sight of them. At that point, police told us officers were already searching for the vehicle and that we should stop. As mad as I was, we weren't going to risk our lives or anyone else's. We stopped chasing and crossed into another shopping center across the street, figuring we could slowly drive around in case we spotted the car again. We never did. To this day, we don't know who the driver was, what his motive was, or if the police ever found him. We did see him briefly before the spotlight incident. A white male wearing a dark baseball cap, driving a dark sedan that looked like a newer Ford Fusion at the time. It was a close call, and I still wonder what might have happened if he had actually hit us on that empty road, or if that spotlight had caused me to lose control. We don't believe it was road rage, since we didn't do anything to provoke him. To the guy who scared the hell out of us and blinded us while driving, seriously, middle finger to you, man. When I was in my early 20s, I went to Walmart to do a big grocery run. I walked in, grabbed some McDonald's first because everyone knows you don't grocery shop on an empty stomach. I crushed 2 McChickens and started shopping. About 15 minutes later, karma hit hard. My stomach started hurting badly, and I knew a bathroom trip was imminent. I rushed to the restroom in near panic, shut the stall door, and mentally prepared for what was about to happen. There was only one other person in the bathroom, using the stall to my left, the handicap stall. Based on the shoes I could see under the divider, I assumed it was a little girl. As I'm doing my thing, scrolling on my phone to pass the time, I suddenly noticed something out of the corner of my eye. There was a phone sitting on top of the stall door in front of me, not coming from the handicap stall, but directly facing me. I could clearly see a hand holding it. Someone was recording me in the bathroom. It all happened so fast, and I was in an extremely vulnerable position, obviously. The only thing I could think to do was scream, "What the hell are you doing?" Immediately, the person took off. At the same time, I heard the little girl in the stall next to me jump up and run out. By the time I could clean myself up and rush out of the bathroom, whoever had been filming was long gone. I was completely humiliated and shaken. I asked to speak to a manager and explained what happened. They didn't seem nearly as alarmed as they should have been that someone had been recording me in the bathroom with my pants down. I begged them to check the security cameras because I felt violated and genuinely unsafe. About 10 minutes later, they came back and told me a little girl had exited the bathroom shortly before I did, and that it was probably just her messing around, taking pictures as a joke. I argued with them, telling them it couldn't have been her because she was in the stall next to me. She ran out after I yelled, but the person with the phone ran out first. They insisted it had to be the little girl since no one else appeared on camera entering or leaving the restroom around that time. I didn't push it any further with Walmart management. Looking back, I realize I was completely gaslit into believing it was just a dumb kid. But after thinking about it for days afterward, that explanation made no sense. I became convinced there was some disgusting peeping creep hiding in a supply closet or somewhere in the bathroom, recording women at their most vulnerable. To this day, I've believed that video probably exists somewhere online for people with sick fetishes. Not long before this incident, I was also followed by a car after leaving Walmart. I almost made it home before I realized it. I drove around my neighborhood to confirm it, and they were definitely following me. The only way I got them to leave was by pulling into a gas station and yelling, "This person is following me. Someone call the police." As soon as I did that, they drove off. I never saw who it was, and I didn't file a police report. I still can't help but wonder if that was the same person who recorded me in the bathroom. Needless to say, I haven't stepped foot in a Walmart since. It feels like nothing good ever happens there. Anyway, I was putting together a new dresser I had just bought in the back bedroom of my apartment. The bedroom door was open, and I could see down the main hallway into the living room, where my fiancée was standing with our 2 kids while they played. For context, it was around 7:30 p.m. There was a knock at the door, my 6-year-old son ran over and opened it, even though he knows he's not supposed to. That's something we're still working on. He was coming down from the excitement of his birthday party earlier that day, and probably thought someone else had stopped by, even though the party had been over for hours. Standing at the door was a woman I recognized as an upstairs neighbor from the other side of the building. She said she needed help and walked straight into our apartment without waiting for permission. She immediately started rambling, saying she was locked out of the building she lives in, then saying she could get into her apartment but not the building, then contradicting herself and saying she couldn't get into her apartment either. She kept repeating that she was exhausted and extremely tired. She looked very disoriented, unsteady on her feet, and her speech was slurred and scattered. At first, I thought she might be having some kind of episode, but the closer I got to her, the more something felt off. She talked in circles, barely making sense, and mentioned that her parents would be worried if she didn't check in with them, even though she lives alone. She repeatedly asked us to call phone numbers for her. Her phone was in her hand, set to video mode, though it wasn't actually recording. I also noticed her other hand repeatedly fiddling with something in her pocket that looked like a screwdriver. As she tried to give my fiancé phone numbers to call, none of them were complete. Every number she rattled off was several digits short. When I told her that wasn't enough numbers for a phone call, she'd switch to a different number, then stop halfway through saying it. This happened at least 8 times. She kept insisting her phone wasn't working and that she needed to use mine. When I handed it to her, she just stood there holding it, not dialing anything, continuing her incoherent rambling. By this point, I was extremely uncomfortable and angry that this woman had walked into my home uninvited and was behaving this way around my kids. I told my fiancé to take the kids to the back of the apartment. I tried to gently steer the woman out by suggesting we go check her apartment together to see if it was open. I tried leading her toward the door, but she claimed she was too exhausted to walk and needed to sit down. Then she sat herself down on our couch. I was furious but tried to stay calm, knowing I was dealing with someone unstable. My fiancée positioned herself behind the woman to keep her from moving deeper into the apartment or getting near the kids again. After about 5 minutes of coaxing, I finally convinced her to leave with me. I walked ahead of her up the stairs toward her apartment, telling her to follow me. On the way, she tried to enter 2 other apartments that weren't hers. Each time, I told her she had the wrong door. When I reached her apartment, the door was wide open. She hadn't caught up yet, so I glanced inside and saw the couch cushions thrown everywhere and the living room completely trashed. When she reached the top, she tried again to walk into another neighbor's apartment across the hall. I stopped her and pointed out that her apartment was the open one. Eventually, I got her inside. She apologized, saying, "I'm sorry this is how we had to meet. I'm just so tired." I told her it was okay and went straight back downstairs. I had such a bad feeling that I called the police to report that a disoriented woman I didn't know had entered my apartment asking for help. They said they'd send someone to check on her. About an hour later, police knocked on her door, got no answer, and left at 4:15 a.m. Everyone in our apartment was asleep. I got up to use the bathroom and heard the faintest knock at our door. It was so light that I questioned whether I'd imagined it. I asked my fiancée if she heard anything, and she hadn't. We both walked into the living room, and that's when we heard scratching at the door. The sound of someone clawing at your door in the middle of the night is absolutely terrifying. I told my fiancée to stay with the kids. I opened the door and saw the same woman standing at the top of the stairs, staring down at our door. I immediately told her this was not happening again, called her out for her behavior, and told her to get away from my apartment and my family. I said I was calling the police. The second I said that, she took off out of sight, presumably back to her apartment. I called the cops right away. They showed up and asked her a series of mental health questions, which she apparently answered well enough that they said there was nothing they could do. They told her to stay away from us, but that was it. I haven't seen her since, but I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. Ever since she first walked into our apartment, I've had a pit in my stomach that won't go away. Another neighbor we're friendly with later mentioned that someone had been jiggling her doorknob in the middle of the night, too. Putting 2 and 2 together, we're sure it was the same woman. The apartment complex sent out a warning saying that behavior like this is unacceptable, but honestly, I don't know what to do or how to feel. My instinct is to respond with anger and protect my family however necessary. If anyone has any insight or advice, I'm open to hearing it.